Madam Mayor, am I going?
Yeah.
Is that okay? We are live streaming and now ready to start the meeting.
Thank you all so much for being here. It is 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. And I now call to order the 2156 regular meeting of the City of College Place City Council. Deputy Clerk, I assume, will you please take roll call?
Councilmember Jessup.
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland.
Present.
Councilmember Espinoza.
Present.
Councilmember Peterson.
Present.
Councilmember Williams.
Present.
Councilmember Boyle.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. Will you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, thank you. It's now time for public comment. Mary Elizabeth, did anyone submit a written comment in advance or request to speak via telephone or virtually? Excuse me, Deputy Clerk.
No.
Okay. If anyone in person in council chambers would like to speak during this public comment, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to our consent agenda, which consists of the agenda for tonight, March 11th, 2025, the council minutes from February 25th, 2025, excusing the absence of Councilmember Sherman, and purchasing 3 new vehicles that were approved in the equipment replacement plan for 2025. Are there any items any member of the council would like removed at this time? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Is there a second?
Councilmember Williams.
Thank you. So we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. There are 2 presentations on the agenda tonight. First, Mr. McAndrews will present on the prospective field trips to public works sites.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. This is a follow-up from the topic that we talked about. I think it was last council meeting a couple weeks ago. I think back in January, a couple of you guys had expressed interest in having some council field trips. And so we've kind of put together some thoughts to do one to our wastewater treatment plant before it gets too far under construction. And then hopefully we can have a follow-up after construction in a couple years. Well 6 and the East Side Booster Station, as well as that solar array that's out there. The Public Works Yard and Fleet Shop and the existing water tower. And then our Lift Station 5 project. So I've had some further discussions with our consultant engineers that are associated with the wastewater treatment plant project, and Lift Station 5 at JEB Engineers, and they're excited about the opportunity to participate in this. Apollo is the contractor in both of those projects, and they're on board as well. And so I think at this point, what we're hoping to get is some feedback from all of you on how to go about this, whether we want to tackle it in half a day and make half a day of it and go from one to another and go see all these things in one kind of shot with potentially getting lunch afterward or before, or if we want to break it up into smaller tours and try to do little shorter tours once a week or every other week for a couple weeks kind of thing. So yeah, I guess I'm looking for feedback or suggestions on what might work best for folks and what people might be interested in.
Councilmember Jessup, any suggestions?
Just from my own personal perspective, I would love this and thank you guys for working on this and the opportunity, truly. In my personal life, I would say that 2 shots. So like 2 afternoons or 2 mornings type of thing would work well for me personally.
Councilmember Cleveland?
Similar, yeah. I'd really like to see a lot of our stuff that we got. As far as scheduling, I think, clumping as much together as possible would probably be easiest for my schedule. And something scheduled, maybe a month out, because in my other job, I have people that are scheduled that I meet with, and so I'd have to potentially cancel several if if it was, like a week or 2 from now.
Councilmember Espinosa?
I would like to suggest a couple of trips. So because of our scheduling needs, some might be able to go on Tuesdays and others on Thursdays. So having a couple of options would be beneficial for me. So that's what I would suggest.
Just as a follow-up on that, when you say a couple trips, are you thinking do the same thing multiple times, or versus breaking this up into smaller?
I'm thinking doing the tour one day,
Okay.
but offering it two times a week, so that if we cannot attend on a Tuesday, we can go on a Thursday or Wednesday, any other day, but just having 2 options of
That
the
makes sense.
same thing.
Thank you.
Councilmember Peterson?
Oh, yeah. My original thinking was that this could be like a shotgun approach where we would have 5 or 6 or 7 short ones to fit people's schedules, spread out over the next 4 or 5 months. But sounds like I'll go along with the consensus here if it's going to be, if it makes more sense to group this into larger timeframes, that'd be fine with me. I'll go along with the ride. So.
Councilmember Boyle?
I think if we've got at least a month or so of notice, I see benefits to both ways of doing it, whether it's one big chunk or a couple smaller chunks that I could make work. So I just am looking forward to what we do. So, but whatever works best.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Robert, I'm sorry. Councilmember Williams?
I think a month's notice would be really helpful. And if I have enough notice, I can get my classes covered and stuff. So I agree with whichever way we end up doing it. It would probably work with me as long as I have a month's notice, put it that way.
Are we talking about daytime hours, afternoon or early evening hours, weekend hours? What were we talking about?
I was generally thinking daytime during a typical work day.
Okay.
What's that? Sure. I mean, we could accommodate it probably after hours if that's what folks worked better for folks. But what I was thinking was daytime. It sounds like what I'm hearing from most of you is grouping it together, planning a month out, grouping it together, and trying to tackle, look at all of these sites within one day. So probably like one morning or one afternoon, and potentially, I like the idea of potentially doing it 2 times. That might also let us break it up into 2 smaller groups, which could help us get around the requirement to make it a public meeting too. So
Let's forget about that. So are you going to rent us a little bus to ride in, or?
we will figure that piece out. Some of those logistics are still to come. You want to get in a dump truck? We can tote you around in dump trucks.
Yes. Councilmember Peterson, you have more?
It's just not going to be perfect. We're going to try, right? And this is the first swing of the bat at this, and so maybe in future years we'll fine tune this. But whatever you have is going to be just perfect. Okay.
Yeah, sounds great. We will work on planning it according to your comments. So thank you.
Thank you so much for following up on it.
Absolutely.
And not just thinking Councilmember Peterson's like, the man's crazy.
No, I think it's a great idea. I'm looking forward to it too. And I think some of our staff and consultants are as well. So
Yeah, looking forward to it. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments for Mr. McAndrews, we're going to move on to Interim City Attorney Ferguson, who's going to talk about the Northwest Fiber and BCE Holding merger and contract transfer.
Great. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So yeah, essentially this is a transfer or an attempted transfer of or assignment of the franchise agreement. Franchise agreements in terms of the scale of exciting things to get into are on the far end of unexciting. And if you can have anything less exciting than that, a transfer of one is even worse. So I'll try to get you through this as fast as I can, but essentially we just want to make sure that you guys are all aware of kind of what's going on. Essentially, the I guess, yeah, I don't know how to do the slides here. I'm sorry. Can I just, there we go. Perfect. All right. I'll say next slide then. Okay. Yeah. So this is essentially Scott. By the way, I just wanted to start and say I'm Eric Ferguson. We're your with Kurt Ferguson Law. We're your interim city attorneys, and Scott Mahalik is on as well. And he did all the work and looked at all this stuff, and so I'm filling all of his homework, and he's here to answer any questions. But long and short of it is, it's you all passed an ordinance back in 22 to allow Ziply to have a franchise to as it states to construct, install, operate, maintain, repair, and remove fiber optics in the city of College Place. So it's a pretty broad franchise, very standard. We dealt with this for quite some time in negotiations, Pasco and other locations around. So this is pretty common. And then go ahead, next slide, please. And then as recently as December of last year, Ziply sent a formal request for the city to consent to transfer of its franchise agreement to BCE Holding Corporation. And this was common. Lots of folks obviously got these notices because they have franchises all around. And each municipality kind of has its own requirements for transferring a franchise. For example, this same notice was received in Pasco, and the franchise agreement that they had was essentially going to be modeling whatever the Washington Utilities Commission, if the deal went through or was approved by them, then it was deemed to have automatically been signed or transferred. College Place is a little different in the sense that they have some other requirements that are in their code. Next slide, please. This just gives a little bit of a background about BCE Holding. It's a real kind of multi-layer approach that these holding companies have. But long and short of it is, this is basically Bell Canada that has companies, holding companies in the United States, and then they've obviously got businesses that they're acquiring down this neck of the woods. And so, as you can see there at the bottom, that Northwest Fiber will, by virtue of this transaction, acquire ultimate ownership interest of Northwest Fiber and Ziply Fiber. So all the voting interest, so BCE Holdings would essentially cover all that, and that the transaction is currently being reviewed by federal and state regulatory authorities. Next slide, please. So essentially, under the current franchise agreement, Section 24 states that Section College Place CPMC 2018 or 2010-280 assignments and transfers shall be governed by this section. So essentially, what it was essentially a placeholder in the franchise agreement that just referred everything back to your code, which is cleaner because that way you don't get things that are different than your code in certain agreements, and that's how things can get kind of muddied up a little bit there. Next slide, please. So essentially, 2010-280 states that assignment transfers requires, quote, prior written consent and of the city, which consent shall not be unreasonably withheld or delayed. That's very common language, and it's really based on a lot of the federal requirements. When franchises are granted, that there can't be overly strict requirements on transfer. The company is also required to provide specific information and a non-refundable application fee. Next slide, please. So the transferee must meet the requirements of the section. It looks like we've got a miscite in the agreement, but it sounds like essentially they have to have the necessary licenses, certificates, and authorizations from the relevant agencies in compliance with federal law. So those are just basically the simple requirements in the code that have to be met. Next slide, please. And basically it says transferee must comply with all those requirements, and they shall reimburse the city for all direct and indirect costs and expenses reasonably incurred in considering the transfer request. So it sounds like what the city has is currently a $5,000 transfer fee per the application, excuse me, that has been submitted by George Thompson out of Everett with Ziply. So I have a copy. He sent me a separate email with that he's trying to get to the city, and I'll be working with Mike to try to figure out who best to get that to and process that. But essentially, these are additional costs that would be direct and indirect related to any extra expenses it would be yeah, we'd want to be careful though, because that type of transfer fee is obviously not cheap, but it would have to be something that would be really some kind of cost that really couldn't be anticipated outside of what would be normally covered by the fee. Next slide, please. And then any transfer without the city's prior written approval is void and calls for termination of the franchise agreement. So in other words, they can't just do this on their own. They do need permission. Next slide, please. And then here's Ziply's merger with BC Holding is under review of the federal state authorities. And according to their letter at the end of December, the company will seamlessly maintain and Ziply will still remain responsible for obligations of the franchise agreement, not experience any disruption in service. It's a little unclear when you go through all the materials, especially when they start talking about the holding companies and how BC Holdings, and then they get 3 companies down, and then they move over to Northwest Fiber, which then they have 2 or 3 companies down, and then you get to Ziply where we're currently at. So it's really an attempt to make sure that there's full, clear control about who's going to have the ability to manage the franchise. And so that's what the attempt is, to make sure all of these are still.
Mr. Ferguson?
Oh, sure.
When you speak, are you speaking into a microphone or do you have a headset?
No, I should be speaking in the microphone. Is it not picking it up?
You're going in and out kind of garbly.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Yeah.
Our side or your side.
I didn't want to scare you guys by getting too close to it, but I guess we'll have to.
That's better. Thank you.
Great. All right. Very good. All right. So let's see. So yeah, this not much else there to say other than that they would remain Ziply, which would now just basically have a new owner. They would still have all the same responsibilities and obligations. Next slide, please. So this is kind of where it gets to the nitty gritty. Assuming that the merger is approved and in compliance with the previously discussed requirements of the code, the approval to process the transfer, the city would likely have a pretty tough basis to deny the transfer of the agreement. And as stated in our code, the consent shall not be unreasonably withheld or delayed. One of the things that Ziply has done when they put forth all this information is they've provided the structure, the corporate structure that they currently have, what the corporate structure would be going forward. They've showed the level of experience of the same, it's the exact same management team that was in place before as is after. So there's not a whole lot to really focus on other than the fact that they just happen to be 2 parent companies at a 3-layer level above are transferring. So it's not clear to say that there's any particular thing that you could point to that is going to change with related to the service or to the franchise that you currently have. And finally, last slide there. And questions. So yeah, that's essentially what the basic overview. Not very exciting, but still would have to be something that would have to come back. Ziply sent, and I think it's just because they don't live in the world we live in terms of ordinances. So franchises obviously are done by ordinance, and so that's something that's required by state law. And so anytime you're going to amend an ordinance, you have to pass another ordinance. So essentially what we would need to do is put, she sent Miss Epley with Ziply sent a proposed resolution for the city to potentially be able to use, but we would need to turn that into an ordinance to be able to amend the franchise since it is in fact an ordinance. It's one of those few odd situations where it's a contract in the form of an ordinance. So that would still require us to have another ordinance to come back to you with. But at this point, I think the only really the questions that Scott and I have, and I'll let him speak for himself, and he's done most of the work on this. But essentially, what it comes down to is what the process needs to be and what the timelines are. Like I said, I just received a couple of days ago from Mr. Thompson, the corporate counsel, associate counsel with Ziply, I received his application and a request to basically figure out who he could send the money to so they could get this process started. So it's not quite clear to me looking at the materials, and maybe Scott can answer this off the top of his head, but it's not quite clear what exactly that timeline is in terms of approval at the state and federal level of the merger, and then the subsequent transfer of the franchise agreement. But I'll let Scott see if he can add anything to that.
Hi, everyone. So I don't have any current understanding of the timeline for the approval of the merger. I was just reviewing the prior letter that was sent to us, and they said that process is ongoing at this point. I think when we first received the letter, requesting approval of the transfer, they had not complied with the application process and the application fee. But as Eric had mentioned earlier, they're making attempts to do that at this point. So that, would not be grounds for denial, assuming that they comply with those, those requirements under the ordinance that we were discussing earlier. The one thing I would just add, though, is there's a little bit of inconsistency in between the letter that was sent requesting approval of the quote unquote transfer, and they, in the application, they sent a new document saying that this is real, they're not really requesting a approval of a transfer, because as Eric had mentioned, Ziply would still be on the hook for the contract. So that, I think Eric kind of mentioned that before, it kind of leaves even less grounds for denial of the request, assuming that this is all approved, through the application process and through the state and federal agencies. So that's the only thing I really have to add to what Eric had mentioned earlier, but let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Scott.
Sure.
Turn it down just a little. All right, thank you. Councilmember Jessup, questions or comments?
No, but thank you. It seems to me that covered it.
Great. Councilmember Cleveland,
No questions.
Councilmember Espinosa.
Yeah, just a comment. I think it would be good for someone from Ziply to be live during the caller meeting to answer questions that we have. The one concern that I have is on the one of the last slides that says the company will seamlessly maintain the relevant services. What does that mean for the customer? Are they going to not have any disruptions in the system?
Yeah.
The service, is everything going to be the same? Just change the logo and the 1-800 number that they call when the issues arise. What does that look like for the customer, which are our citizens, and they are the ones ultimately that will be impacted. So that is one of my concerns. If they could spell that out, what does that look like, and if that's going to impact anyone at all. But other than that, that's my only question at the time.
Sure. Yeah, no, it looks like there's a whole bunch of backup materials that Ms. Epley from Ziply sent with the letter that are tough to get through because they're pretty dense. But it would appear from those materials, and I would be happy to reach out to her. Her and I are on a first name basis a few years ago trying to get through this process over at Pasco. But yeah, no, it sounds like from all those materials, when you review all those materials, that nothing's going to change. It's not even the name, the logo, the number, nothing. The only thing that's really changing is this third layer above a holding company, which is a little contradictory because what they're applying for is a transfer, or what the letter states, as Scott was saying before, what they're trying to apply for is a transfer of the franchise. Now, really what all they're doing is that the parent company, kind of 3 levels above, who ultimately controls the company's assets, is changing, but Ziply's still going to be remaining as the franchisee. So it's a little bit of an inconsistency there, and we can nail that down for you. But that's how you really figure out where these things line up and don't line up, is when we finally have to them out and present them to other people, that's where you start to be able to see the nooks and crannies that are still missing pieces, I should say. So yeah, no, I can circle back with her and then follow up with any questions. And I guess what the request is to see if we can have somebody from Ziply at the meeting when we would have the ordinance before you to move forward. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
All right. Okay.
And can I just add something real quickly to that comment? In the letter that was sent over by Ziply, it specifically says in there that all Ziply fiber contact information will remain unchanged. So I think that's the plan. Like Eric had mentioned, same, in theory at least, same management, involved, same employees, same contact information, but Ziply can answer that also. But that is stated in the letter. So.
Councilmember Peterson.
Is this a case that Ziply was trying to overcompensate for something that was happening on the top floor and didn't want to get caught here local on as far as a
That's
franchise movement?
No, that's an excellent question. I think what this may be related to, and again, this is starting to get fuzzier. The more time we spent on it, the more we kind of delved into it, the less clear it became as to what is really going on. But it very well could be that this is a federal and state UTC requirement that they need to move through these processes, even though they're not actually changing the responsibility of the local company or even the regional company. The ultimate holding company is what is changing. So I don't know if that's what's being required at a federal and state level to go through these franchise transfers. But this is a lot of effort on their part and money, quite frankly, to do these things. So clearly, they believe that this is something they need to do and to be able to have control of the franchise. So, but we'll definitely. It's a great question for Ms. Epley.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Williams.
I think you pretty much covered my question, but so Ziply will still exist after this is done.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sure will.
Yeah, well, I mean, if the feds approve it and they have to do it to make that happen, I don't see a problem.
Okay, great. Anything else?
Yeah, questions. I think
No questions?
the only questions that I had were answered, so that's great.
Okay. Robert?
Yeah, thank you. I do have a quick question. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Hearing that Ziply is remaining a company, I think part of our concern is they have quite a few open permits that haven't been closed out. And I think part from the public works standpoint or hesitation was we didn't want to transfer a franchise until the permits had been completed and closed out. Is that something that we should take into consideration, or considering that Ziply will remain a company, does that matter?
Yeah, no, that's a great question and not unusual. I've heard of that before. So yeah, that would be something that we could explore. We'd need to take a look at the franchise agreement. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if there's a violation, if there's something in a lack of compliance, I should say, of a certain provision of the franchise agreement, this would be something that you would want to make sure that got resolved prior to allowing the transfer. That would not be. I don't think that would be unreasonable for you to require compliance with the agreements that you currently have if they're outside of that and you're having trouble getting that completed. So, but yeah,
I think if anything, we just want to have the permits completed and closed out before this transfer happened, so that there wasn't the confusion of, are they still on the hook for finishing these projects out?
Gotcha. So there just hasn't been final inspection of certain things?
Yes, that's correct.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your patience. I know it wasn't exciting.
No, it's important to hear.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so we have no public hearings on our agenda tonight, so we're going to move on to the action items. There's 6 of them tonight, and first, Mr. Carlton's going to present on the change order to improve and streamline the Tyler EPL product.
Thank you, Mayor. We're in the final stages of implementing the community development software under Tyler. As you recall, we implemented Tyler Financial Systems back in 2023. And for the last year and a half, they've been slowly moving through the process of implementing the system for community development. With the hiring of Michael Murray, the new senior planner, he comes to the city with a lot of experience in these software programs. And they have requested some modifications that will improve the system, make it more usable and for both staff and citizens. So we are recommending approving this 184 additional hours that Tyler is telling us they need at a cost of $23,920. John, do you have anything to add?
Most of the changes that Michael is working on implementing are dealing with workflow. Part of his, the reason why we were able to hire him is a grant through Commerce related to streamlining our permitting processes and to make sure that we're in compliance with the timelines that we're required to meet for permit issuance for buildings, residential and commercial structures, and then also the planning processes like subdivisions and site plan approvals, environmental reviews. And so at his previous employer, they had a pretty robust program. It was a different system than what we're implementing, but there is workflow capabilities within it. And so he's working on that part of it. Across the board through the building and planning division and also public works. So it's more than just a building and permitting program. It's going to help us with our workflow, development related stuff, permit related, but we're looking, I think our go live date is in July of this year. So things are moving along. We're pretty happy with the progress that we've made so far. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
All right, Councilmember Jessup,
At this time, thank you.
Councilmember Cleveland,
No questions.
Councilmember Espinosa.
On the document, it says that the task EPL professional services remote, are they performing all the work remotely? Or are they here implementing the work?
They're working remotely. We are meeting with them about 4 times a week. And then I would say Michael is probably spending about 70% of his time working on this. It's during the week and then other planning tasks. And also Zach Hofer, our building inspector, has been really helpful on the building side. And I don't think he's spending as much time, but both of them are working really hard on it. And now we're actually, tomorrow we're going to start working with the public works crew on their part of it. So
the concern is with a lot of people working remotely, do you have any means of inspecting the work that's being done or making sure that those deliverables are being completed in time so that we're not overbilled for things that are supposed to get done on time?
There's multiple phases of the work that they're doing remotely. So we are actually having, I think there's about 4 hours of meetings a week where it's a Teams meeting, and our team and the EPL team are working in a meeting. But the rest of it is the programming side of it. And yeah, I mean, it's, they have to meet the deliverables and the program has to function at the end of the day. So.
Okay. It says estimate billable effort 184 hours. Is that an estimate? So it might be more at the end of the day, or?
It's my understanding that they are dedicated to completing this under this final amendment.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Councilmember Peterson,
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Williams.
Do we have the budget for this? Where is the money coming from?
It'll come from the reserves in the IT fund,
Okay,
which are sufficient to cover. This is not a huge dollar amount for that fund.
awesome. Thank you.
Councilmember Boyle.
I don't have any questions. I just, knowing knowing the huge asset that some of those workflow software pieces can add in efficiency, and especially when you've got so many different departments and people on your team working on things and being able to streamline, I just think that having this piece implemented will be so beneficial to you guys. So I think it's great.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
Authorize the city finance director to sign the internal change order from Tyler Technologies for additional hours to complete the community development software implementation.
Thank you.
Second, Councilmember Cleveland.
Thank you. We have a first and a second from Councilmember Jessup and Cleveland. Any discussion or questions before we go to a vote? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Next, Mr. Rizzatello will present on a financing agreement with the State Department of Ecology to conduct a general sewer plan update.
Thank you. So we end up getting awarded the grant funds to a general sewer plan. We're actually getting, we end up very successful in the past 2 years with getting funding from them. So as you'll see in information for consideration on the stormwater side of things, they're funding our decant facility construction, and there'll be a future agreement for that for just shy of $2 million coming out of them. And then, believe it or not, we also qualify to do engineering and get monies for that for Earl Lane. That has been a chronic stormwater flooding area, and you'll see that coming through a future meeting. What's in front of you tonight is to do another update to sewer plan. This is very important because this is what qualifies us for grant and loan funds from both the Federal Environmental Protection Agency as well as the State Department of Ecology. Why we're doing this in a little bit of a shorter time frame than the last one is all the grant money we got out of the last wastewater sewer plan. We actually worked through all the projects, believe it or not, in there. So the 10 years of sewer lining that was covered, the lift station, which is wrapping up over on Southwest First, and the treatment plant. So it is time to refresh the list. And then not just that, but also you can put other elements in it too. And one thing that would be interesting is as we're working on the wastewater treatment plant, you know, in past years, when we were doing the wastewater sewer plan way back when, we weren't thinking we were annexing Martin Airfield and going out in that direction. Now we are. So if we put reference that we would be opening like Purple Pipe, which is like where it's treated effluent for irrigation and water lungs and stuff. When I met with Ecology in Olympia, they were very interested in that, where potentially they would give grant money for that. But right now, because there's no mention of any of that in the plan, we're just dead in the water on that. So that's why it's important to get this updated, and that's what you see in front of you tonight.
All right, Councilmember Jessup.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thanks.
Councilmember Cleveland.
No questions.
Councilmember Espinosa. Councilmember Peterson.
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Williams.
No questions, but I'm happy to hear us thinking about Purple Pipe.
And Councilmember Boyle.
No questions. Thank you, Mike.
Mike, I have a question because so we're financing $75,000? Is that what we're talking about? And why does it cost this much to do a sewer plan update?
That nowadays, that's just what plans cost now. I mean, if you look at past plans like the Martin Airfield plan, that one's a good example. The one the community economic revitalization paid for one neighborhood, at the end of the day, it's going to end up being $125,000. So honestly, since this covers the whole community, that's actually a pretty good deal. Historically, even the citywide water system plan that was done like 5 years ago, that was about $80,000. $100,000. So that's par for the course. And it's really because you're in a rural area, there isn't a ton of engineers that do this sort of stuff. So it's really supply and demand.
So that was my next question. So this is gonna go out for proposals?
Yeah.
For somebody to take it? I
Yeah.
see. Okay. All right, then. If there's no other questions or comments, do we have a motion here for Mr. Izzutello?
Move to adopt resolution number 25-022, which permits city administrator to sign financing agreement with State Department of Ecology Water Combined Financing Program, number WQC-2025 COPIED-00045.
Second, Peterson.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Next on the agenda is retrofitting an upgrade to the fire station. Mr. Izzutello, you're just speaking on that?
Yep, thank you. This item's been a capital facility plan for a while. As mentioned, about a year and a half ago, we went after a state legislative earmark and then waiting for the Climate Commitment Act and what was going to happen there. It was on ice for a while. Now they finally issued the grant agreement. So this is just designating the authority for me to sign it. And as you'll see, the dollar amount is just north of $1.1 million, and it's working on the HVAC and making things more energy efficient over in the fire station. Thanks to the 16th District legislators, they were able to shepherd this thing across the finish line. And it doesn't require a match, so it's a state legislative earmark.
All right. Councilmember Jessup, questions, comments?
This is the one where we had a presentation on it a little while back.
Yeah, a
right?
while ago.
That's fantastic. Yeah, great.
Councilmember Cleveland,
No questions.
Councilmember Espinosa, Councilmember Peterson,
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Williams,
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Boyle.
No questions. Thanks, Mike. This is great.
All right, and we have no other comments. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 25-023, which permits city administrator to sign grant agreement with State Department of Commerce through the Local Emissions Reduction Project Direct Appropriation Program for College Place Fire Station Energy Efficient Project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Espinosa. Any additional discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. All right, Mr. Izzutello, you're going to present on a strategy for engineering the roadway and stormwater infrastructure near Davis Elementary School and Sager Middle School.
Thank you. So this item, we turned in grant applications to the State Department of Transportation Safe Routes to School program for sidewalk engineering and construction. That has yet to be awarded, but we're in the list for it to be funded for both of them. And then you can get it done in a 4-year time frame. However, engineering really tends to be like the sidewalk and then the adjacent gutter line. Some of the streets don't even have a gutter in there. Luckily, because the mayor gave me a heads up about this nonprofit grant opportunity for neighborhoods such as this where it's a lower income, there is actually a nonprofit that like funds engineering related ventures. So the idea is to go to them for additional monies and maybe look at the actual streets in addition to shoving the sidewalk in there, so that way it can be done right over time. So
That was useful.
yeah.
Councilmember Jessup. Councilmember Cleveland, no questions. Councilmember Espinosa, no. Councilmember Peterson, no. Councilmember Williams
No questions. This is great.
and Councilmember Boyle. All right, so we have no questions. Can we have a motion for this resolution?
Councilmember Williams, I will move to authorize resolution number 25-024, which supports a grant application into Philanthropy Northwest Planning Type 2 program for Davis and Sager Safe Routes to School engineering projects.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Peterson.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. All right, moving quite along. The next is Mr. Rizzatello, who will inform us of money he hopes to obtain to reduce fuel and wildfire risk in our city.
Thank you. So this item, it's a grant program where you could either pay for wildland mitigation plans or to, in essence, have funds that either HOAs working with private contractors could remove like fuels and stuff from wooded areas. And money can be spent down actually over a 10-year period if you get it. So it's not like there's a hurry on it either. So with the hazard mitigation plan that Chris Lee presented a couple meetings ago, there's a whole chapter in there about like the wildland mitigation and wildland urban interface zones. That consultant, that essentially they basically use all sorts of GIS imagery and LiDAR and things to determine areas that need have an eye on. Two of the areas are owned by us. They're private HOA areas. So some of the wooded areas around like Garrison Creek and villages of Garrison Creek, and then the wooded area along Dones Creek near the Homestead subdivision. And then we enter that into the program that essentially it also waives any sort of local cost waiver as well. So it's basically a full-on grant. So the idea is to try to get it, and if we get it, that's a resource the HOA folks can essentially partner with us on to deal with that.
All right, Councilmember Jessup.
That's great. How far does this interface expand out? So you mentioned two forests, but
Yeah. I mean, really, it's just that little like private wooded area along Garrison Creek and Dones Creek. The U.S. Forest Service, they have a tool that shows that, and then I was able to download it and put it in ArcGIS. So that was the two maps.
Does it cover any like grassland areas and that kind of stuff, or just kind of forested?
I mean, it isn't really grassland. It's just with the environmental regulations the state has, you have to have like those natural areas and so forth. But the problem is over time, especially with your private HOAs and stuff, to frankly expect people to know and take care of that kind of stuff doesn't over a long time doesn't really work that great. So that's ideal with this. So to try to get funding and deal with it and partner with them, and then they can do that. So
Sure, yeah, always thinking ahead. I appreciate that very much.
Councilmember Cleveland.
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Espinosa, no. Councilmember Peterson, none. Councilmember Williams
No questions. This is great.
and Councilmember Boyle.
No questions. I feel like, even though it says that we can pay it down over 10 years and use it down as over 10 years, $200,000 when you're talking that kind of a work, I think is actually going to go pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. If there's no additional questions or comments, is there a motion on this resolution?
I'll motion to authorize resolution number 25-025, which supports a grant application into the U.S. Forest Service Community Wildfire Defense Grants.
I'll second.
Great. Thank you. First and second from Jessup and Boyle. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. And last, Mr. Rizzatello will inform the council of plans to study the consolidation of irrigation District 14 and villages of Garrison Creek HOA.
Thank you. So this is merely a feasibility study, and this was we started investigating this due to request by the jurisdiction. So Villages of Garrison Creek Homeowners Association, they sent a letter and email asking for assistance because of issues in there. And then Mr. Paul Hartwig, who was the Public Works Director here, he was still operating District 14. And they're just getting to a point where they have retirements and then problems finding people to replace people, and they're larger districts, so we don't know what we don't know. And State Department of Health, they have this consolidation feasibility study program because on their end, frankly, it's more of a pain trying to police all of these different districts and stuff. So they would prefer everything to be under one umbrella as opposed to many. So we were granted the $70,000 grant. We issued the RSQ, published notice in the paper, downloaded the small works roster for the area, sent out emails of folks. We ended up getting a response from RH2. They were involved in our water system plan and a lot of well work, both here as well as irrigation 14 and other areas. So they definitely know the area. And then we had staff from Public Works grade the proposal, as well as folks from Villages of Garrison Creek, and then Paul over at 14 too. So everyone deemed that it was a good proposal. So we're seeking permission to enter in a contract with RH2 to get the ball rolling on this.
Right, sounds simple enough. Councilmember Jessup, questions or
No,
comments?
thank you.
Councilmember Cleveland?
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Espinosa? No. Councilmember Peterson?
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
No questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Boyle?
No questions, thanks.
All right, quick and easy. If there's no further discussion, is there a motion?
Sure, I move to, go ahead.
I'll motion to adopt resolution number 25-026, which permits city administrator to sign contract with RH2 Engineering to conduct water system consolidation feasibility study for $70,000.
Second. Second.
Thank you. First is Councilmember Cleveland and second Councilmember Peterson. Any additional discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. All right, skipping. There's one administrative report on the agenda tonight, and it's our wonderful city clerk who will present to the council the graphics for the year of community events in College Place. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to inform you guys, I've made this beautiful graphic, which our mayor helped me choose. Anyways, describing our events for the year, it does not include one in mid-October. We're still naming that and deciding what it's going to be, and so therefore it's not on there. But we're shooting for October 11th, and I'll let you know as things emerge. This was my own personal translation, so it might not be adequate, but I hope it is. I think I would have heard about it already. But yeah, I was just letting you guys know what's going on with the city for this year, so. Do we get to ask what the October 11th event is? So it's this whole, yeah, absolutely. It's this hopeful city branding event, you know, something to do with health and wellness. And we're probably also going to incorporate the, Mike should tell him.
Yeah, so, yeah, well,
Well,
you're on.
okay, so
yeah.
Well, so the Koala Artful Celebration event, I mean, you know, we were hoping to do it in June, but we're not going to discuss it until April, and it puts us up
It's
against a
too
big time
short
crunch.
of a time frame, so from at least what was conveyed, so.
for the size of the
Yeah.
event. Plus it'll be a larger event, hopefully. So we just want to capitalize on what we're doing already and make sure that that event is a splash too. So that's undetermined. It's just a possibility. And also at our new and improved, formerly Farmers Market, now Market in the Park, we will be accepting again other forms of payment to help improve food access to people in need.
I love that little logo. It's super cute with the basket and it matches, of course, the other one. So I think that's
Isn't that adorable? And it has a little cupcake in there. I don't know if you guys saw that.
the logo up at the top, the market in the park logo. Thank you for getting the events out because I think it's really helpful to our community to be able to plan ahead and see at least as much as possible what's happening around the region so they can plan accordingly. So thank you for getting that done early. Any questions or comments?
Which kind of begs the question now that I'm thinking about it, about if you guys are all gonna be there at the same time. And I
Where?
will, at events, at public events, doesn't matter.
We usually are not there at the same time. You know, we roll in and out, but it's not at the same time and we're not standing together.
Okay. All right,
We just make sure we don't talk to each other.
just avoid each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, do I know you? All right, so. If there's there's no informational reports in the packet today. And there's no executive session. Dang, I can't fill a whole hour anymore. All right, is there any other business for go to the order from anyone? All right,
Updates on the park online.
any updates on Lions Park? Sorry, John, you were this close.
He was.
There's a lot of activity out there. They've laid maybe 600 feet of concrete pathway today. They're getting really close to beginning filling the pond. The buildings we're putting finishing materials, painting and trim work, that type of stuff on the buildings. The picnic shelter is going up. You can actually see the structure from Larch. They bladed, they field. Got the grade set on most of that. Yeah, there's a lot of activity, a lot of things. It's going. I don't think we're going to be open in April, but the contractor, we will be open for market. So, yeah.
Well, according to an 8-year-old little girl, the mud is fine. The playground looks ready to go. So I think we can just open up the
I know,
gates.
Aiden's said the same.
Yeah,
That's-
I'm sure if we surveyed the children, the mud is fine. If we survey the mothers and fathers, maybe not quite so much.
I bet you a few dogs would love running through it as
Oh,
well.
yes.
Right. All right, as long as it's done by the market.
Yep.
All right, thank
I
you.
would just encourage our council members in our city, spring sports are kicking off this week for our local schools and our kids are really excited and our programs are growing and doing incredibly. We have College Place High School has over 70 students out just for the track and field team this year.
Wow.
And so the programs are growing and they're doing amazing things. And so events kick off this week. So find the ones that you love, softball, baseball, track, soccer, what have you, and go support the kids because they are so fun to watch. So
I will add, so both my boys are at Wahai and they're on the track team and their coaches are constantly reminiscing about the days when there was no College Place High School because they had, the pick of the litter. And so there's like, oh yeah, that kid that, ran in the Olympics. Well, he would have been, a Wahai student. And it's just kind of funny to hear the coach kind of talk about it. But yeah, they got some great athletes down there at the College Place High School. So.
Anyone else want to share anything?
we made it almost an hour.
Okay,
close.
almost got to an hour. All right, well, if there's no other questions or comments, do we have a motion to conclude?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so there's no objection. The meeting is concluded at 7:59 PM. Thank you, everybody. Gentlemen, thank you for joining. Councilmember Williams, have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.